I'm 87 years old, and it took me most of my life to understand that being needed is not the same as being loved. I used to think they were the same thing. I built my whole identity around that belief. I wore it like a badge. I fed myself with it. Now I sit in this quiet house and I can tell the difference. I'm not telling you this because I want sympathy. At my age, sympathy feels thin. I'm telling you because when you get close to the end, the truth starts to press against your chest. It wants to be said out loud, not to fix anything, just to be honest before it's too late to speak. The house is smaller than it used to feel, or maybe I am. My wife has been gone for 9 years. The children live in different states. They call, they visit when they can. They are kind, but they are busy with their own lives, as they should be. I taught them to be responsible, to work hard, to show up when they're needed. I see the irony in that now. When I was a young man, I believed that love was proven through usefulness. If I could provide, fix, solve, carry, protect, then I was loved. That was the bargain I understood. I grew up in a small house with four brothers. My father didn't talk much. He worked. My mother was always moving, always cooking, cleaning, tending to someone. Love in our home was never spoken. It was demonstrated through effort. If my father repaired the fence, that was love. If my mother stayed up sewing patches into our jeans, that was love. No one said, I love you. It wasn't necessary. We were needed. That was enough. At least that's what I thought. When I met Helen, I was 24. She had a laugh that came out before she could stop it. It embarrassed her. I loved it immediately. I didn't know how to tell her that. Instead, I offered to drive her home. I fixed the broken latch on her apartment window. I carried her groceries up 3 flights of stairs without being asked. She would smile and say, you don't have to do all that. But I did, because if she needed me, she would keep me. That's how my mind worked. We married 2 years later. I stood there in a rented suit, hands sweating, and promised to take care of her. I meant it, every word. I didn't promise to understand her. I didn't promise to sit with her fears. I didn't promise to share my own. I promised to take care of her, and I kept that promise. I worked in construction at first, long hours, hard labor. I came home sore and proud. When she'd ask how my day was, I'd shrug. Fine, busy. What I wanted was for her to see how tired I was and appreciate it, to understand that my exhaustion was proof of devotion. She wanted conversation. I gave her overtime. When our first child was born, I felt something shift inside me, a weight and a purpose all at once. I held that tiny body and thought, they need me. And it felt like the purest form of love. I started taking every extra shift offered. I volunteered for weekend jobs. I told myself it was temporary, just until we were more stable. There was always another version of stable. Helen would sit at the kitchen table after dinner, our daughter asleep upstairs, and say, you're never here anymore. I'd answer, I'm doing this for us. And I believe that ended the conversation. I didn't see the look on her face as a warning. I saw it as ingratitude. That's hard to admit now, but it's true. In my mind, love was sacrifice, and sacrifice meant absence. Our son was born 3 years later. I missed the first steps of both children. I wasn't there for my daughter's first school play. I sent flowers to Helen on our 10th anniversary because I was out of town managing a project. The flowers were expensive. The note was short. I thought that counted. There were small moments that I dismissed at the time. Helen asking if we could take a weekend trip. Me saying maybe next month. My daughter knocking on my office door while I was reviewing blueprints, asking if I'd come see the fort she built in the backyard. I told her I was busy. She stopped asking after a while. I didn't notice when that happened. As the years went on, I moved up, supervisor, then project manager. Eventually, I had men coming to me for decisions. They depended on me. The company depended on me. I felt important. When my phone rang at dinner, I answered it. When someone needed help solving a problem at 10 p.m., I drove out to the site. Helen stopped arguing. She became quiet instead. Quiet is more dangerous than anger. I know that now. I used to come home and see that the lawn was mowed, the kids were fed, homework done, everything functioning smoothly. I took pride in that. I thought, we are a well-run household. I didn't ask how lonely she felt eating dinner without me. I didn't ask what she thought about when the kids went to bed. She once said very softly, I don't need a provider. I need a husband. I laughed it off. I said, you have both. I was wrong. When the children became teenagers, they didn't need me to tie their shoes or check under the bed for monsters. They needed something else. Advice, presence, listening. But I was more comfortable being needed in practical ways. If my son's car broke down, I was there in 20 minutes with tools. If my daughter struggled with a broken heart, I told her she'd be fine and went back to checking emails. I didn't know how to sit in pain. I only knew how to fix things. That's another difference I learned too late. Fixing is not the same as loving. By my mid-50s, the house was quieter. The kids left for college. Helen started volunteering at the library. She made friends I didn't know. She joined a book club. She laughed more with them than she did with me. One evening she said, do you ever think about what we'll do when you retire? I said, I don't plan on retiring anytime soon. She nodded. That was the end of it. I thought she was proud of my drive. Maybe she was just tired. The turning point didn't come with shouting. It came with a diagnosis. Helen had been feeling fatigued for months. She brushed it off. I was in the middle of a large commercial project and barely noticed. When she finally went to the doctor, I went with her out of obligation. I remember the smell of that office, the way the doctor avoided direct eye contact at first. Cancer. It sounded like a word meant for other people. Suddenly, I was needed in a way I had always claimed to want. Hospital visits, medication schedules, insurance calls. I managed it all with efficiency. I created spreadsheets. I organized appointments. I was exceptional at logistics. But when she lay in that hospital bed at night, thin and frightened, she didn't need a manager. She needed a hand to hold. She needed someone who could sit in silence without checking a watch. I tried. I truly did, but I was uncomfortable. I kept talking about treatment plans, second opinions, numbers. One night she looked at me and said, you don't have to solve this. I didn't know how not to. The months blurred together. Our children flew in and out, juggling their own lives. I stayed by her side more than I ever had before, but it felt like cramming for an exam I had ignored all semester. I was present, but presence built over decades cannot be recreated in a few months. The day she died, the room was very still. Machines humming, a nurse adjusting something quietly. I held her hand. For once, I wasn't thinking about what needed to be done next. She opened her eyes briefly and said, "You work so hard." There was no accusation in her voice. That made it worse. I wanted her to say she felt loved. Instead, she acknowledged my effort. After the funeral, people told me what a devoted husband I had been. They talked about my reliability, my strength. No one talked about tenderness. The house felt different without her. I walked from room to room, noticing things I had never paid attention to before. The way she arranged the kitchen spices, the notes she left in drawers, photographs I hadn't looked at in years. In most of them, I was absent, or I was standing slightly apart, distracted. I started to understand something I had avoided for decades. Being needed had made me feel secure. If someone needed me, they wouldn't leave. They wouldn't look too closely at who I was beyond my usefulness. Love requires something else. It requires vulnerability. It requires being known. I don't think Helen ever fully knew me. I'm not sure I knew her either. We functioned well. We survived. We raised good children. But I wonder now what we missed. In the years after she passed, I retired. The company replaced me within a month. They sent a plaque, a handshake, a dinner with polite applause. Then they moved on. The phone stopped ringing as much. Problems were solved by someone else. For the first time in my life, I wasn't urgently needed. I thought that would feel like freedom. It felt like emptiness, without task, without emergency, without people depending on me to fix something I didn't know who I was. I tried to stay busy, volunteered, joined the committee at church, fixed neighbors' fences, but at night the quiet pressed in. I began to see that I had built relationships around transactions. I give, you need, I provide, you stay. But love is not a contract of services. It's being wanted even when you have nothing to offer. That realization came too late for the person who mattered most. My children love me. I know that. They visit, they call on holidays, they ask if I need anything. Sometimes I want to tell them I don't need anything. I just want them to sit with me to talk without looking at their watches. But I hear my own voice from years ago telling them I was busy, so I let them go when they say they have to leave. I don't blame them. This is not a story about villainy. I wasn't cruel. I didn't betray anyone. I didn't abandon my family. I simply confused roles with relationships. I believed that if I was indispensable, I was cherished. Now, at 87, I can tell you they are not the same. You can be essential and still be alone. You can be relied upon and still not be understood. There are moments I replay in my mind, small ones. Helen sitting on the edge of the bed, brushing her hair, asking, "Are you happy?" I answered, "Of course. Why wouldn't I be?" She didn't press. I wish I had asked her the same question. I wish I had sat down beside her without a solution in hand. I used to think love was loud in its actions, grand in its sacrifices, but I've learned it's quiet. It's staying at the table after dinner. It's listening to the same story twice. It's holding a hand without checking the time. Those things didn't make me feel powerful, so I undervalued them. Power fades, usefulness declines. What remains is whether someone feels safe with you. In my final years, I am trying to practice something new. When my granddaughter calls, I don't rush her, even if she repeats herself, even if I've heard the story before. I sit, I listen, not because I'm needed, but because I want her to feel loved. There's a difference. If you're listening to me now and you're younger than I am, I won't tell you what to do. I've given enough instructions in my life. I'll just say this and pay attention to why you show up. If you show up only to fix, to solve, to prove your worth, you might miss the chance to simply be there. And being there without agenda is sometimes the whole point. I thought I had time to learn that. I thought there would be a season when work slowed down, when the kids were grown, when Helen and I would sit on a porch and talk about everything we never had time to say. The porch is still there. The chair across from me is empty. Time does not return what it takes. I don't cry much anymore. Tears feel like a younger man's language. What I feel now is heavier, quieter. Regret isn't loud. It doesn't shout. It settles in the corners of a room and waits. I live with it. I don't fight it. There were good years. There was laughter. There were birthdays and vacations and Sunday dinners. I don't want to erase that. But alongside those memories is the knowledge that I often chose being indispensable over being intimate. If I could sit across from the man I was at 35, I wouldn't scold him. He was doing what he thought was right. He wanted to protect his family. He wanted to matter. I would simply tell him this: they already love you. You don't have to earn it every day. Sit down. Stay a little longer. Let them see you without the armor of usefulness. I don't know how much time I have left. At 87, you start measuring life in smaller units, seasons instead of decades. The mornings are slower, the stairs steeper, but I am still here. And if this confession reaches someone who recognizes themselves in it, that's enough. I confused being needed with being loved. I know the difference now. I just wish I had learned it when there was more time to use it.